Pain. What's the purpose of pain? None of us like pain. I'll be honest, I avoid pain, hard times, suffering, adversity at all costs. I think that's why God allows it in our lives, because we avoid it. And pain is the very thing that changes us. There's nothing that changes us more significantly in our lives than this matter of pain, adversity, suffering. Certainly, we don't go out seeking hard times. We don't go out seeking, but there's some things that you and I need to press into, knowing that they're hard, knowing that they're going to be painful, that we need to do anyway. And then there's things that God allows into our lives that cause great pain, great suffering, significant discouragement in our lives. And sometimes we don't understand it, and we just wonder, God, why is this happening? What's going on? Why am I experiencing this? Why have I lost a job, a home, a spouse? Why do I have this sickness? All those things come into our mind. But if we're just honest with ourselves, I think that we can all say that the most significant positive changes in our life have occurred in the middle of great pain. And I would say that's definitely true for my life. So, why do we experience pain? Why does so much adversity come into our lives? You look around this world, and it's a cruel place. There's so much that's happening, and the older you get, the more you realize that things just are not right in this world. And we wonder, God, are you there? God, do you care? God, what are you doing? Can you stop this pain? Can you stop this suffering? Can you stop what's happening in my life? The loss of jobs, the loss of a home, the loss of a spouse, the loss of a child. So many things that are happening in our lives. So many people are hurting, sickness, death. And we look up to heaven and we say, God, what are you doing? Can you take this away? Will you take this away? Why is this happening? As I counsel with people on a daily basis, and the tears and the struggles and the heartache and some of the things you just don't know what to say sometimes, all you can do is pray and say, God, help us here. God, show us the way out. God, relieve them of this. God, help them through this. Lord, provide for what they need. The pain is so great, and I just wonder sometimes, Lord, why? In his book, The Passing of the Night, Robbie Reisner tells the story of how he woke up one night. He was a prisoner of war in Vietnam. And while he was a prisoner of war, he woke up in the middle of the night to screaming and shouting and somebody being interrogated and tortured. And he tells the story of waking up to those screams, hearing the yelling of this person that was in tremendous pain. And after some time, Robbie Reisner realizes that that's him, that he's the one screaming, that he's the one who's in pain. He realizes that he's the one being interrogated. And that's the power of pain. This was both a physical torture and an emotional torture for Robbie Reisner. And that's what pain does to us. Pain will actually come to a point in our lives sometimes where it removes us from our bodies. It removes us. Our minds take us someplace else in an effort to protect us. It will remove us from the scene. The brain has an uncanny ability to protect you, to protect us. There have been times, so many times I've watched it, where people will take on somebody else's emotions. Somebody else will be stressed out. Somebody will be emotionally disturbed, and the person that's around them will begin to take on those characteristics. They'll take on the anxiety. They'll take on those things. The brain will translate those things sometimes and take them on as actually being themselves. So not only does the brain have a way of protecting us, but it also sometimes will empathize and sympathize. We would connect right with each other. Our brains are an integral part of the pain that we feel, and not only its protection, but then in inviting in pain, sometimes it's may not, if I could talk right, it may not be our pain. So this thing called pain, and when you really think about pain, when you think about how people suffer, how people react to it, how people respond to pain, the different ways that people take it, like I said, respond to it, the decisions they make with pain, what it causes them to do. It's remarkable. It's a remarkable set of emotions, feelings, physical feelings, emotional feelings. And when you really go all the way back to the beginning, when you go back to creation, when you go back to when God made man, when he made us, when he made Adam and Eve, when he created this world, he created paradise. He created a perfect environment for man and woman to thrive in. It was a place where they could walk with God and experience life, eternal life. There was no death. There was no pain when God created everything that he created. And so when you really think about it, I don't believe that man was made for pain. He wasn't made for death. These things are foreign to us. They have invaded us. They have invaded our minds. They have invaded our life. Pain, death, suffering, adversity. They have invaded. They're alien to us in what God intended for us. So therefore, we struggle to deal with them. But it's our own doing. It's our own sin. It's our own rebellion against God that has caused the pain and suffering and the adversity that we go through. We are the cause of this. And isn't it amazing that while we are the cause of this, I think about when the Israelites were in the desert, and they had just been released out of Egypt, and they spent a year in the desert preparing to go into the promised land, and then refused to go in, and God sent them in to wander in the desert for the next 39 years after that, for a total of 40 years, that even in their rebellion, God still provided for them. And I view pain that way. Our sin, our rebellion has caused us to experience now what we experience, pain, suffering, death, things we weren't created for, things that are foreign to us. We don't respond to them correctly. We don't respond to them in the right way. So now God has to tell us how to respond to these things in his word. God gives us things in his word because we don't do those things right. Everything God gives us in his word, he gives us because without what he's telling us in his word, we wouldn't do it right. We wouldn't do it the right way. We wouldn't treat people the right way. We wouldn't respond the right way. So God has to give us these truths in his word. And just like he continued to provide for Israel, even in their rebellion, after they didn't go into the promised land, God still provided for them over those 39 years. He still provided food and clothing and blessed them in so many ways. God's grace and mercy was so evident as they continued to walk in rebellion to God, but yet he still provided for them and even blessed them in a number of ways. They just didn't get they didn't get that ultimate prize that they had coming to them. Well, I kind of see pain and suffering the same way. In our rebellion, God has now taken pain and he's given us some great principles and some great truths from his word as to how we're to respond to pain and to death and how we're to be prepared for those things. We're to be prepared for these things, and God in his word tells us how we're to be prepared for these things, and that how pain and adversity and suffering can now be used by us to make us better people. They can be used by us to grow us. They're used by God to protect us. They're used by God to prosper us. They're used by God to give us a purpose. We caused it. We've caused the pain and suffering. We've caused the adversity. God did not create man for pain and death. We brought that on, but in his grace and in his mercy, he has given us so many blessings and benefits from pain, adversity, discomfort, suffering. So how do we attack it? How do we deal with it? Boy, all we can say is dig into his word and know what it says. Be prepared for pain and suffering. Jesus suffered. Jesus was abused. Jesus was tortured. Jesus was put on that cross and he died a cruel death for us. How did Jesus handle it? How did Jesus deal with it? That's how we deal with it. I hope this has been a help, just a small bit of encouragement around pain and suffering. I'm looking forward to teaching the class here that we're going to be teaching at church in the next few weeks on pain and adversity in our lives.